We are live.
Okay, we are live. All right, at this time, we'll call to order. Meeting of the Suffern Central Board of Education, May 12th, 2020. Let the record reflect all board members are present. Time is 7:38. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I just have a quick I have a technical issue here. Okay, there we go. Okay, 1.04, acting superintendent comments.
Thank you. Good evening. I'd like to take a few minutes to review the budget process, especially for those who might be joining us on the live stream for the first time tonight. The budget process starts in December, where the business department begins by looking at prior years, sharing department and building spending. In January and February, Ms. Isolde and Mr. Schleicher met with every building principal, director, and assistant superintendent to determine needs, wants, and priorities. The first budget workshop was held on March 3rd. The second, originally scheduled for March 17th, was then held on April 7th, the third on April 21st, and the fourth on May 11th last night. In each budget workshop, great questions were posed by the board, with revisions subsequently shared, and each time additional cuts made for a total of 5 proposals. The budget presented at last night's workshop and to be voted on for adoption tonight in the administration's professional judgment reflects the financial resources needed to maintain our people, our programs, and our facilities in order to continue to provide the highest quality education for our students. Any additional cuts would impact our staff, programs, facilities, and ultimately our students. While this process is followed each year, this is not your typical budget year. The COVID-19 pandemic has impacted us in ways we never could have imagined, and for some, in the most devastating of ways. With respect to the budget, it has created unknowns like we have never seen before, a new timeline and voting process, and unanswerable questions. We know there will be savings from this closure, as well as additional expenses and items we are still waiting to hear from New York State on, like transportation. What will school look like in the fall? What additional expenses will we have? What typical expenses may we no longer have or may be reduced? Suffern Central has a long history of strong fiscal health as evidenced by our strong Moody's rating and consistently low fiscal stress score. While the town of Ramapo, Rockland County, and New York State have been and continue to be faced with deficits and shortfalls, our fiscal responsibility has held strong through the years and will carry us through this time. This gives us the luxury, and yes, I call it a luxury, of having a variety of options, and of course, a variety of opinions. I deeply respect the passion with which each board member has expressed their views and recognize that not everyone will agree. They must weigh the needs of our current taxpayers and the needs of our students, both current and future. This is not an easy task. I want to thank Ms. Isolde, Mr. Schleicher, Mr. Palma, and everyone who worked on the budget and reiterate that in the administration's professional judgment, this budget reflects the financial resources needed to maintain our staff, our programs, and our facilities in order to continue to provide the highest quality education for our students. Thank you.
Hey,
Thank you, Lee.
Thank you for that. Excuse me. 1.05, public participation. This is public participation for action items only. As we have done for the last, I guess, 3 or 4 meetings, we've requested that anybody in the public that wishes to provide what would normally be public participation up on the podium in the boardroom to submit their statements to the district, and they'll be read here live. So Heather, do you have public participation to read tonight?
I do. I have several.
Okay.
So the first one I have, can I go?
Yeah, just if you would just make sure that as you read them,
I'm going to say who it's from and
yeah, okay.
Whatever information they gave me. So this is from Jennifer Butler. This is her email to the Board of Education. I am writing with some concerns about the school budget discussion and vote this evening. I do not think we should be using all the reserves at this point. We have no idea what the future holds or what Governor Cuomo has planned for school aid, and we need to have a long-term plan as the economy is so unstable. I feel the community and the district should split the responsibility, and that a small tax increase would be the right choice. I also think if it is possible, it would be wise to wait and see what our state funding will be before making major decisions. Our future is unknown, and we need to have a contingency plan with funding and reserves to maintain our excellent school district. Thanks for listening, Jen Butler.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and this is the next one. Dear Board, this is from, Susan Kroc, K-R-O-K, Kroc, 36 Church Street, Airmont, she is. Dear Board of Education members and administrative staff, in looking at the budget presentation for the 2020-21 school year, I want you to know that I am comfortable with my taxes increasing between $100 to $150 per year in the name of saving programs, jobs, and preventing our wonderful school district from turning into a district similar to our neighbors to the east. I no longer have children in the Suffern Central School District and am a widower. So I lack direct connection to the school district, but I know that our property values are directly correlated to the success of our schools, and as such, spending an additional $12.50 per month will not make or break my household budget, even during this unprecedented time of COVID-19. Please consider adopting a budget that meets the needs of our school, cushions us for the uncertainty that lies ahead, and leaves our school in a healthy financial position that secures our future as the premier school district in Rockland County. It is why I moved here almost 40 years ago and why I continue to call Suffern home. Susan Clark.
Thank you.
This next one is from Clyde Van Dunk, who lives in Hilburn. Proposing a 0% or a negative tax increase is probably the most foolish, irresponsible recommendation I've ever heard from a trustee of the board when you have no idea what the state is going to do or what the economy is going to look like a year from now. What will the Board of Ed do when you have a multi-million hole next year after limiting taxes this year? That's a real problem. The Comptroller of New York State has said over and over again, do not emulate East Ramapo. East Ramapo used reserves to lower the tax rate because it was politically expedient. Do not do like East Ramapo did and use reserves indiscriminately to lower the tax rate because it's politically expedient. That's the kind of political budgeting that buried the town of Ramapo in the village of Suffern. Fiscal responsibility doesn't mean playing politics with school revenues. It means doing what is smart and strategic. It means financing your public schools properly. Maybe Trustee Reimer would consider donating some of the $3 million in taxpayer money back she received for secretly taping conversations, not counting the multi-year paid vacation she got as well. She's received from the town of Ramapo to help taxpayers like myself. Reserves are set aside for earmarked objectives, not to lower the tax rate as Trustee Reimer suggested. It's not a slush fund that a new majority can use on a whim this year or any year. Do not mortgage the futures of this district on a short-sighted financial outlook. Listening to the attempted micromanagement of a $140 million budget by some members of this board is ridiculous. You pay experts for a reason. Listen to them, not your political cronies.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and this is from Dan and Stacy McGrath. Please include this letter, I sent to the board yesterday. Okay, hold on. I listened to the entire workshop last evening and was terribly saddened that 4 of our 7 board members are willing to pass along a 1.25% increase in the tax levy for the 2020-2021 school year when hundreds, if not thousands of the families in our district are financially, socially, and emotionally devastated. Thank you to the 3 board members doing whatever they can to fight for our community and a 0% increase. I am confident there are cuts that can be made to the $144 million proposed budget and millions of dollars previously accrued for lawsuits and rainy days that can be used while still not having implications on personnel or the curriculum. I beg of you to reconsider putting forth what was discussed last night and work together to find a solution whereby there is no increase to the taxpayers of our school district. Sincerely, Dan and Stacy McGrath.
Thank you.
And this next one is from Patty Clavelli, who is a parent and an employee. Dear board members, Suffern Central is a strong school district and we need to continue to stay on that course to keep it great. Many families have moved here because of what our schools have to offer. Our children are the priority. The students are the most valuable asset and this school district has paved the way for excellence. I am the proud parent of a graduating senior. I also have 2 daughters who graduated and have been very successful in their college careers because of the foundation that they had here in the district. I ask you not to use our reserve funds. We need to have a reasonable tax increase in order to provide support and sustain the level of excellence that we have become accustomed to as a school district.
Thank you.
Hold on, more. This is from
How many more?
This is like 2 more, this one and another one.
Okay.
Should be done.
Okay.
Dear school board members.
I'm sorry, who is this? I'm sorry, who is this from?
Mile, he is an employee. I'm not entirely sure if he lives in the district. I can't say.
What's her name?
Fanetta Miles.
Oh, Fanetta Miles, okay.
As you close out discussions and debate over this year's school budget, I'd like to remind you and the Suffern Central School community that all will be well. It's a nice gesture to offer the community a no tax increase. And some of you who feel this is a reasonable way to go may mean well, but it is not necessary nor the time for panic, desperation, and well-meaning gestures. It is important during times of crisis that our children see us remain steady, stay the course, and continue with our best practices we have practiced all these years. This is what our district needs right now. This is what has kept our school district one of the top districts in the Hudson Valley. We have managed our finances well, and we should continue on that path as we always have through our tax system. A reasonable tax increase is what we know will help our district best and will continue to ensure our financial stability for years to come. And most of all, ensure the educational future of our most valuable asset, our children within the Suffern Central School District. Thank you for your time and attention. Fanetta Miles, and I have one more.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, my name is Paul Diamond. I have 2 children who have come through the Suffern schools and have lived in the district for over 25 years. want to speak about the proposals concerning the possible 0 or -% tax increase for this year's budget. I am deeply sensitive to the financial pressures we are all facing in this crisis as the nation spins toward Great Depression levels of unemployment. But nonetheless, I am growing equally uneasy as I listen and read about board proposals to burn through the reserves to keep tax increases to 0. If this were a new thing, I could write it off as a one-off. But I heard the same discussion last spring before any of us ever heard of COVID-19. So this is about something deeper, a push to an austerity budget without even a failed budget vote. To what end? More money in the pockets of the community as the board starves the district? This is short-sighted and ill-informed. And when the governor cuts school aid, as he is likely to do since he too maintains an austerity budget, what then? Once you have burned through the reserve for a short-term political gain, how will you cover the governor's shortfall? School budgets should hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. But that is not what I see here. Instead, I see a Board of Ed plagued by short-termism. Look, schools are the backbone of a community. We have watched the slow erosion of that backbone in our neighboring districts as they produce 0% budgets year after year. One day this crisis will be behind us, and how well you steered the district through these rough seas will determine what we look like when we get to the other side. You cannot so easily rebuild once you have torn it down. Don't base long-term policy on short-term politics and consider the ramifications of a 0 budget. Thank you. And that is all I have right now.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Well, thank you, Heather.
Okay.
For reading all of those. And thank you to the, I guess, 7 individuals who submitted their comments and had them read here tonight. So thank you.
Okay.
Okay. We will close that portion of the. I assume you've gotten no other emails since you started, right?
I haven't. I've given my
Okay.
Yes.
So
Matt, what about the email that was sent to the Board of Education regarding the budget? Can that be read also?
No. You can't just read emails that get sent to the board. That's why the ones that were read tonight were sent to the district cleark.
I wish you had made that a little bit more clear yesterday.
I think that's been made clear.
People sent that to the board.
Okay, that's been made clear in the past, and the board has received emails from the public for years and years. It's never been the intention of any of those emails that get sent directly to the board to be read in public.
One of the ones that Heather read is one of the ones that was sent to the board either yesterday or the day before, and then the person followed up with it. So I don't know if that's the email you're talking about, Don, but
No.
one she just read is one that was
right.
Yeah, no, I know she sent it, and I asked her to send it to the board to make it official. But if yesterday, then we could have basically told people, anyone who's sending it to the Board of Education should make it official and send it to the clerk. So it's unfortunate because you don't have to mention names, but just to let you know that there are other people who have another opinion besides raising the school tax.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, action items. Action item 2.01. This is the resolution for the 2020-2021 budget. Do I have, sorry. Do I have a motion?
Moved.
Dr. Nick Pond, do I have a second? Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Shapiro? Discussion?
Discussion.
Melissa? Did you?
I just want to say that I would like to use the reserves and keep it at a 0 budget. Last year, there was a new reserve that was passed by the state. And this reserve was one that when we passed the resolution for the reserve and funded the reserve, it was one that I voted no for. And it was because other districts were setting up the reserve and they couldn't afford to fund the reserve in the full amount. They were funding it for $50,000, $75,000. Suffern Central funded the reserve, and it was the teachers' retirement reserve for $1,075,000, which was the full amount that the school district could fund the reserve. And the reason why the school district was able to fund that reserve for that much money is because the school district has been overtaxing, and we're able to fund all these reserves over the years. And you're going to find next year, at the end of this year, when we're doing the balances, when we get the report, that we're going to be funding all of our reserves all over again with a lot more money than we did last year. And there's going to be savings this year. So we're not saying to use $30 million of reserve balances. Far from that. So there's plenty of reserves that are there, but what I'm suggesting is that you lower the burden on the taxpayers this year and next year, possibly, if things are not sufficient for our taxpayers. There's no political gain for me at all. I just want to make sure that our taxpayers are being taken care of. There are people that can't afford food. Suffern is going out, the police department, the fire district. Isn't that right, Don? Isn't that what you said last night?
Correct.
These are our neighbors. These are people who need the help. Having our taxes, like one woman had said that she doesn't mind our taxes going up 100 or 150. That's all things being equal. That's not the equalization rate changing in the negative. So your 1.25% change in tax rate means a 3.5% tax increase. That's not going to be $125. That's not going to be $150. It's going to be way more. So I think you really have to think about your 1.25% tax increase. I mean, it's what you're doing to the taxpayer. It's not just a 1.25. And that's what the taxpayers really have to understand. And that's what all of these board members have to understand. When you say 1.25, that's not what the taxpayers are going to be paying. So what you're doing is you're really hurting everybody. And what's it all for? So that you can keep all the money in the bank? Why don't you give some back to the taxpayers? I get no political gain from this. I could care less. I could care less if I don't get voted back in. Really. Believe me, it would be much easier for me. So don't vote for me. I'd rather save you money and not get your vote. That's what I'd rather.
Okay, thank you. Did you have anything, were you finished, or did you have anything else? Okay. Anybody else have anything they want to add before we vote?
Yeah, a quick question on what you sent us this afternoon about the buildings and grounds, utilities, $1,350,000, gas and electric. Is that for this coming year, or you sent us this sheet on buildings and grounds, technology, other?
Yes, the sheet I sent you today is a breakdown of that line from the slide. So if you think of Steve's slide from yesterday with the expenditures, it had like, I don't know, 10 or 11 categories, or maybe 9 categories on it. One of those lines was building and grounds. So this is the amount we have budgeted in each of those areas for next year.
Okay, I'd like to discuss some of those if you don't mind. Basically, the new initiatives that you've budgeted for $480,000 for floor, casework, paving, ceiling, replacement, painting, loading dock. I would think that it would be possible maybe to postpone most of that instead of spending $480,000 on those, put it off for a year and save $400,000 right now. Number two, the building condition survey, 80,000. I'd like to know a little bit more about that exactly, but is it possible that you could simply postpone that building?
No, that's required by law. The building condition survey is required by law.
Okay, scratch that one. Supplies, service, and subscriptions, $555,000. Is there a reason for that price? I'm sorry, it's supposed to be 55.5. I would cut maybe $25,000 out of that line. You also have textbooks, $322,000 in 805. My question is it possible to use the current textbooks for one more year and cut the entire $322,000? Number 5, professional development and travel, $80,000 to travel. I understand maybe there's some that would be important to travel. However, I would cut that line by $60,000, okay? And number 6, professional development. Could you explain a little bit more about that line, which has, was it $224,000? What is exactly professional development for that amount of money? Anyone?
I'm muted, Don. You asked me a lot of questions. I didn't know if you wanted me to go one at a time or you want me to do them all at once because I'm going to need you to repeat them.
Okay, well, I was curious in terms of the title. Let me go on then. You also have textbooks for BOCES. I don't know if that's mandated for $35,000. I would cut maybe $15,000 out of that budget line. And what's really interesting is basically the board seems to want to pay the spring coaches half their salaries, even though they weren't coaching in the spring this year. That's $75,000 you're paying coaches for not coaching. I understand the idea that it's a loss, but basically most of them are teachers and they are getting paid. But basically, I don't think we're like the federal government and basically paying farmers not to plant products. Number 9, building repair and in-house projects, furniture for buildings, $900,000. I would automatically think that we could probably do with less furniture if possible. I would cut, if possible, $700,000 out of that, keeping $200,000. So my question is, you know, looking at the budget, these are the lines for the future, and no one's really looked at them to say, hey, maybe we can put them off, or maybe we really don't have to do it at this point. So if you can answer those, that would be great.
So I'm going to answer them in total. And my answer in total is those have been prioritized by the administrators, directors, and assistant superintendents in whose professional judgment they have prioritized those as needs in order to maintain our staff, our programs, and our facilities to continue a high-quality education for our children. Could they be cut? They could all be cut. Every single one of those cuts will create an environment that is a lower quality of education for our students. So in the professional judgment of the administrators, how they have prioritized that.
I think it's extremely important to remember that it is not the board's responsibility.
Matt, I have the floor. Okay.
Oh, I didn't realize you were still speaking. I'm sorry.
Yes, I am. Okay. But just to answer that, Ms. Weber, the question is, are they really, when they were made, okay, it was really probably a little bit before the coronavirus struck and so forth. But don't you really think that we could maybe, you know, not do some painting or casework or furniture and things that, with this situation right now, it just seems like no one's really looked through the budget, looking at where we are to say, hey, we can, you know, save these things. We're not destroying programs, okay? We're not taking teachers off the rack here or anything. It's really just simply trying to save some money for this particular year. I don't think it's really fair to, to have the community look at this and say you're paying, the coaches $75,000 half pay, even though they didn't coach. That seems to be irresponsible in terms of fiscal responsibility. Okay, if you look at the other figures there, development and travel, $80,000. Okay, for professional development travel. I'm not quite sure exactly how that's going to destroy any programs. I really think that before you vote on the budget here, someone should, as we've said before, take a little bit of a knife and carve some areas off, not impacting the classroom, okay, not impacting the teachers, but these are things that really could save over $1 million, okay, so you wouldn't have to have that tax increase.
I think the most important takeaway, if you're finished, Don.
Correct.
You finished?
After you, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I think the most important takeaway from everything that Mr. Cairns has said is that this is precisely why the board should not be micromanaging and be in the weeds on this budget. We are not qualified to make these decisions. To sit and arbitrarily say you would cut 700,000 here and cut 60,000 here, you have no basis for pulling those numbers. You're not involved with the process. You're not in the buildings. You're not an administrator. And I think that it's extremely dangerous for a board member to get involved at this level. This is micromanaging at its finest. As a board, I'm sorry, I'm not. But I'm not finished. I'm sorry, I'm not finished. I'm not finished.
That's wrong. If you have to vote on a budget, you need
Melissa, Melissa, I believe you spoke. I have the floor. You can address my comments when I'm finished. The board is responsible for oversight. It is responsible to put the people in place to run the district, the people who have the background, the knowledge, the education in order to do that. We are here to oversee. We are not here to go line by line and arbitrarily decide if the elementary schools are buying too many pencils, or if the middle school is buying too much furniture, or if we need to paint this room, or if we can wait to paint this room. We are going down a road and a rabbit hole that is completely unnecessary and completely unwarranted. That is my position and my opinion. I fully realize that some of you disagree with it, but this is not our job. Our job is to approve the budget or not approve the budget that gets put forth by administration. We have had 4 budget workshops. We've had 5 different proposals. We have had hours and hours of conversation. It's time to vote.
So why do they have to approve the budget, Matt, if we're not supposed to ask these questions?
You've asked.
Why do
you
they have
have asked
so that they, well, I thought I was talking now. You can go ahead.
Well, you asked me a question. I'm sorry. I was trying to answer your question. Go ahead.
I didn't finish asking it.
Oh, I'm sorry. By all means, go ahead.
So my question was, if there is a process by which we approve the budget and it's our fiduciary responsibility to figure out why it is they're spending the money on each one of the lines of the budget and figure out if we need to do it. And in particular, in a time where money means more to people because there are people out of work, there are people that lost the breadwinner at their home, there are people that lost their lives to this virus, and there's people that can't afford to put food on the table at their house. And it's very, I think, cavalier to say, well, we don't have any place in that. If we don't have a place in this process, why are we placed in the process to approve the budget from the administration? There was a case in Roslyn, New York, out in Long Island, where they were padding the budget and stealing money. So it is our job to look into these budget lines and to find out what exactly they're spending the money on. That's the whole point of the process. So if you have a response to that, I'd be...
I certainly do. Certainly.
Okay.
Your responsibility is to approve the budget. Your responsibility is to ask all the questions that you've asked over the last 8 weeks. Nobody argues that point. I don't disagree with that. We've all been part of that process. What I disagree with, fundamentally, is that we should not be looking into the depths and the abyss of every line that gets put forth. Do you have faith in your administrators?
Is that why we weren't given the budget?
I asked you a question. Do you have faith in your administrators?
I have faith, but I have faith,
I'm a
but it's not.
CPA, and I have.
Okay. Well, I can only hear one of you at a time.
I have experience in municipal finance. I wasn't given the budget. Is that why I wasn't given the budget? Every other year, right, Teresa? You've given us the budget before. So I don't know. This year is the first year we didn't get the budget. Was that your decision, Matt?
None of this is my decision.
But
I know how much you like to blame me.
Matt, were you asking me that question?
I'm just asking a question.
My question was to you. Do you trust our administrators? That's to you, Angus.
I said, my answer to your question is, I have trust in our administrators and I have faith in our administrators, but I don't have blind faith, because that's dangerous.
Verify. Remember that, Matt?
Oh, right. Yeah, that's right. Trust and verify. I forgot. Thank you.
Can I answer the question that was asked of me?
Sure.
You don't have any different information this year than you've gotten in the past.
We haven't gotten these figures before. This is today.
I'm saying that you don't have any more detail, anything less this year that you've received in any other year.
Right.
Yeah, we got all of the budget information, all the different line items that you gave us. You gave us.
No, I only do that for the quarterly report.
No, you gave us. I'll pull out the budget.
Okay, I don't send that information.
Okay, I'll pull it out.
Does anybody have anything they'd like to add that hasn't spoken? Mr. Shapiro with their hand up. Paul?
Yes, I'm old school. I raise my hand. And I know, Don, it's old school from the 1820s or whatever.
And you've been involved in education for a long time like me. So we do have some experience, Matt, with regard to numbers, okay? But if we really should be looking at the budget a little bit closer, and this is the first time we've seen some of these numbers, the board should, yes, we have trust in our administration, but you have to verify them also.
Well, you'll have your opportunity to vote no as soon as we're done talking. Mr. Shapiro.
Okay. All right. If we add up those large figures of the information that we received, it adds up to about 16 million. Since all of us have crystal balls, I guess we all know what's going to be happening between now and June 30th of 2021. But we don't have crystal balls, and we don't know what's going to happen. And we don't know what Governor Cuomo is going to say on Friday. And it's very possible that Governor Cuomo on Friday, though I don't have a crystal ball, he could say, we're going to have to cut the state funds in each school district throughout New York State, and he'll give some type of blanket number. We're going to have a problem with that, of course, as every school district will have. But as I take a look at this amount, and it adds up to, like I said, about 16 million, anything can happen. And some of these things, we may not be spending the full 16 million that's listed here. It may come down to we can only spend because of limitation on travel, limitation on a lot of things. There could be an increase on the sanitation of building and waste removal. And there could be a lot of different figures that are going to change. Of this 16 million, we may end up spending only 12 million. Just saying that. Maybe we'll be spending 14 million, but whatever it is, whatever we have left, that at least for the 21-22 budget, that will help us there if we need it, and I'm assuming that we will. But I don't have a crystal ball. But as I look at this, yeah, we could cut all of these things, but we may not need to because we may not be spending a lot of this money.
Then why have a tax increase this year? It doesn't make sense. Trim these, okay? That's all. I'm not saying you have to cut every single one of them, but come on, professional development for $80,000.
I let you speak when you were speaking. Don, I let you speak when you were speaking. I would appreciate if you would do the same to me. If you choose not to, I'll mute myself and I'll just sit back and listen. So you tell me. Okay. So listen, it's tough. If we raise it by 1 1/4, and what Melissa said is 100% true. If we raise it by 100 1/4, if we only raise it by 1%, it's not going to be that percentage. We know it's not. It's going to be closer to probably 3%. If we raise it to 1 1/4, it'll be 3 1/4. You know, and unless all of a sudden there's a lightning strike somewhere and money starts coming down, but it's not going to happen. So it is going to be expensive. But like I said last night, the $150, it's going to hurt, but it's that big bubble that all of us pay. And it's not, you know, taxpayers, it's all of us, any of us who live here in Suffern. It's what we're paying. And it's a huge nut that we have. It's a large amount of money. One of the public comments said that, you know, our homes are tied to the quality of the education, and we want that quality to be the same. And Don, I understand you 100%. There probably are some things here that could be cut, which means that maybe the total number, the 144 million, could be a lot less. But if this is what it is, and this is what we're going to be saying that we're going to be doing, okay, but we also know that we could be ending up saving money. It may not help now, but at least it'll help next year, which may even be worse. We don't know. As bad as things are now, there's no guarantee that it's going to get slightly better, a lot better, or remain the same or become a little bit less. This is a tough decision. It's very, very, very tough. And we just have to do what each of us thinks is best. And I understand the cutting. I understand Melissa's point. I do trust the administrators. And we have to let them make those difficult decisions. I'm done. I'm on mute.
Right. Thank you. Anybody who hasn't yet spoken? Melissa, I see your hand. I think you might be muted. Before you go, Melissa, I just want to give anybody an opportunity that hasn't spoken yet, and then we'll come back to you. Is that okay?
Yeah, I just have a question for Steve.
Okay. Okay.
I have a question.
Chris?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Angus, just hang on. I just wanted to give an opportunity for people that haven't spoken yet to speak if they want to.
Okay.
Chris?
Yeah. So I just like to say a few things. First off, I want to thank my colleagues, and I want to thank the administration for all their hard work. You know, coming into this process was daunting, to say the least. And then with this thunderbolt of COVID, I think added a whole extra layer on top of an already difficult situation. Initially, my approach going in as a overall perspective was to try to preserve and maintain some of these reserves that people are talking about. With the process now and the economic climate of COVID, I think it's an important thing that we start to judiciously use these reserves. And I think using them with thought and using them with balance, you know, balancing them with a small tax increase, I think is the right way to go. And I think I'm looking at this over a 2 to 3 year period, and not just in a very short 4 to 6 month period. So that goes for both the tax cert reserves and also the capital reserves. I think, we had a discussion last night about using the capital reserves that are earmarked for the projects, the 4 projects that are on the proposition. And I think that's very, very important that we use reserves for that, because I think, it's earmarked for that. It has some self-sustaining quality. We're going to get some rebates on those projects. So I think that helps the district even more. So I think using these reserves judiciously and trying to maintain them, I think is very important. And a balanced approach, I think, is what I've tried to give and what I've tried to approach this process with. And that's all I have to say.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Tom, did you have anything? You're muted. Tom, you're muted. Tommy, you're muted. Can't hear you. Can't hear you. Nope. Wait, Angus, I don't hear you either.
He's having mic trouble. I don't think he's muted anymore. I think he's having mic trouble.
Yeah, Tommy, we can't hear you. I don't know why. Melissa, I know you had a...
Just a technical thing, Tom. If you want, you can go call on your phone because we're not hearing you through your computer. So if you go back to the invitation, it had a phone number on it. Also, Eric just put it in the chat. And you can call on your phone and you'll be able to talk through your phone. Or try going and joining.
All right, well, Tom's working through his technical issues. Melissa, you had a question.
I just had a question regarding the assessed values and the exchange and the equalization rate. And Steve was going to talk to Scott Shedler and work on the assessed values and what the rate came out to after working on the assessed value.
I did speak to Scott today. He actually watched the presentation and had no problems with my numbers. And as we had talked, the $50,000 is just a random figure that was actually picked. I talked to him about how I picked my numbers and how I like to be able to audit my figures and replicate them. And he agreed with my methodology without any problem at all.
And what about the tentative budget number from the governor's equalization rate?
I was exactly right. I used the right numbers. He agreed. And as I prefaced my numbers beforehand, obviously we wanted to know what the tentative numbers might look like. And he agreed you're using the tentative rolls. And as I qualified my page, that obviously these numbers are subject to change because they're going to go through grievances. They're going to go through that. And normally that process isn't finished until August. And normally you don't have a final tax rate until August. So, but they wanted a picture provided in a slide. So I did that. So it's an accurate, as an accurate portrayal as one can have right now with the figures that are available. We agree.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
You're welcome.
Excuse me, Matt?
Yeah. Oh, Tom, you're there.
Yeah, I'm here. Okay, you can hear me now.
Yes, okay.
Okay, yeah,
Anything?
I'm going to be real quick. I just want to really thank all the effort put into this budget. And I want to thank my colleagues here, and I do respect your opinions. But it's time to vote now, and I'm prepared to vote. So I'd like to just move on with this. We'll tackle tomorrow's problems tomorrow, but I think it's time to make the vote.
Okay, thank you. Angus, I think you wanted to say something else.
Yeah, I was just looking at the spreadsheet that we got this afternoon. one of the problems I have is the biggest line item that you've broken down is buildings and grounds. And we don't have a person here from buildings and grounds to sort of walk us through what these things are and why we're spending $900,000 on building repair. We have money in capital reserves that we could use for that purpose. Do we not have money in our capital reserves that we could do that with?
The capital reserve is actually being used for proposition number 2, and your annual maintenance every year on the buildings. You have 7 buildings. That's your annual maintenance for very large buildings. Very large commercial buildings.
But
and you only get 50% aid from the state. So yes, the upkeep on those buildings is a large number. There's no doubt about it.
Right, but I guess my question was.
I mean, you want to know what nuts and bolts and he's going to replace, or a window?
No. I would like to know
what is it you like.
I mean, I have some questions, but he's not here to answer them. So I mean, we had him last night at the workshop, but we didn't have these numbers in front of us, and then we got them today, and we don't have the person who would be able to break those numbers down here to explain them to us. So it's essentially what's been going on the whole time is we ask for something. And we either get it at a later date or we get it and we can't substantiate and ask questions about it. So that's one of my big problems. And that's the largest line item that you have here. Then the other thing I wanted to ask was with regard to BOCES. You have several things there, but it's $3.149 million that we're spending at BOCES. Mm-hmm. Now, is that the number before or after we get the 48% back?
Before.
That's the number before we get the aid back. So okay, that's and then we get 48% of that back.
Okay, so we get roughly $1.5 million of that money back. Where does that money go?
It gets put in an aid line item called BOCES aid in the budget.
Okay, and that'll be used now. That'll be used when? For the next year, the following year?
Correct. The budget you're going to vote on tonight.
Okay, so we're using what amount did we get back last year from BOCES?
Teresa, can you have that off the top of your head? What number you got back? He's waiting for WinCap.
So this is not really a true $3.149 million.
Yes, it is. You have to spend it to get it back, to get the aid.
But you would be using capital that you got last year for it. And that's what you just told me, isn't it? In other words, you're getting 48% back from last year, and you're telling me that goes into this line item for this year. Am I right?
It funds this line item. A budget has appropriations and it has revenues to fund them. Yes. Okay,
but I only see the money we're spending. I don't see the money we're bringing in. So there should be, say that we spent the same amount last year, the same $3.1 million, there's a $1.5 million credit towards that number. Am I right in saying that? In the hypothetical.
If you looked at last night's proposal, you'll see there's $1.9 million worth of BOCES aid that we're projecting, 1.953 to be exact.
So in 2018-19, we received almost $2 million, but it's all dependent on what we spend, obviously.
Right, it's driven by expenditures.
Okay, so did we spend?
The reason it was so large was because they did a large purchase of technology.
Technology, yes.
And the reason this one is low is because we haven't done a large purchase of technology yet this year. So right now it's at 1.953. It may be a little greater, but maybe not, depending on how we move forward and what the governor's going to say.
So my question was, is that $2 million that we got back part of the $3 million that you're spending there now?
No.
It will be used to offset it, yes, as a revenue, absolutely.
Right, but it appears on the revenue slide from last night.
Right.
When I was asked for this information last night, I was asked to provide detail on the 144 million. I did the best I could in the short time we were offered. But the number you're asking for is reflected in last night's presentation on the revenue slide. That's where Steve just got that 1.9 million from.
Right. It also basically comes straight off of our state aid runs that were provided, by the legislature. You can see it there as well.
Right. So just I want to see if I'm clear. Maybe this will just help anybody that's listening, or maybe that has the budget presentation. In the budget we're approving tonight, or voting on tonight, based on the presentation from last night, Steve, your second slide, which was the anticipated expenditures, had a budget of 3.149 million for BOCES without special ed and tech. On slide 5, in your anticipated revenues, you have proposed BOCES aid revenue of $1.954 million.
Correct.
That 1.954 is the 48% that we would get back on the 3.149. Is that?
Almost. It's a year off.
It's a year off. Okay.
You would just have transportation aid the year later.
Right.
But
it's driven by the prior year expenditures.
Right. Okay. But conceptually, the expenditure line in the budget for 2021, 48% of that would be a revenue line in next year's budget presentation.
Correct. If you look at the slide you're talking about in anticipated expenditures, if you look at the adopted 1920 budget line item where it says BOCES, you'll notice that's a little over $3 million.
That would be our revenue line of 1.954 for this year.
Correct.
Okay.
That $3 million equates to the 1.9 that we're actually projecting, that the state is projecting, because we're actually going to make some purchases now that we're anticipating. So that revenue, and remember, the 48% is an average.
Right.
There are things that get aided a little bit higher. There are things that get aided a little bit lower, depending on the type of service.
Okay. That makes sense. And I don't think in the 4 years I've done this that I've looked at the slides that way. So finally a light bulb just went off.
Yeah, transportation is the same way.
That's why it's a good idea to discuss these things. So the other thing that I wanted to ask you, Mr. Schleicher, do you have any of the information regarding the facility stuff? I mean, I'm not asking about light bulbs and paint.
What questions do you have? I'll try my best. If I can, I'll try to get you an answer before the end of the meeting if I can.
Okay. See but that's the point that I was making before, that it would be easier if we would have just had Mr. Palmer here, because he could probably rattle these things off the top of his head because he's engrossed in it. Like you have one thing here, equipment, for plow equipment and stuff. I mean, as far as I know, I think we already have snow plows. I mean, some of this stuff, and every budget line, there's supplies and stuff like that, and equipment.
I'll say this, if I might. I know Mr. Palma, and I've gone over all of his stuff since I've gotten here, and I think all of you know Mr. Palma as well, and I can tell you that everything is very well planned out, including equipment. We have a 15-year capital improvement plan for all of our buildings and equipment. Everything was scheduled out to the dollar. I'm very proud of what I found when I came with John Palma. Here's a gentleman who has an MBA himself and isn't afraid to use it. He has a spreadsheet on everything that he does. He has a methodology for everything he does. Very similar to myself. You may not agree with my decision, but I'm going to so you know how I make my decisions.
I voted to hire him. I have no problem.
I can tell you he's not wasting any funds.
No, I voted for Mr. Palmer to become the director of facilities. I have no problem with his qualifications. And he got the MBA and all that stuff while he was working his backside off for this district. I have no qualms with Mr. Palmer. My questions are, specific to the numbers that he has here. I just want to understand it because I have an obligation to the community to make sure that the amounts of money that he's spending is good for this point in time, because we have.
What is your question?
Well,
I haven't heard a question.
You know, you have on here repairs and in-house projects. What in-house projects are they working on?
Well, I can tell you they're constantly working on painting, on glass repair, on floor repair, wall repair, lockers, everyday maintenance.
Okay. I mean, we have schools that don't even have, like, elementary schools don't even have lockers. So, I mean, and it's we're not talking about a small number. I mean, I realize we have 7 buildings and they all have to be maintained, but you're talking about almost $1 million in-house repairs. And it would be nice to just understand what those repairs are.
Well, a lot of it is our plumbing and heating. I can tell you that, because a few of those buildings still have older boilers in them. A few of those elementary buildings that you're talking about. I can tell you that we actually looked at them, and again, that's in part of his capital plan, which I think you've actually seen his capital plan.
However, isn't there furniture for buildings in that line also of the 900,000? Do we have to have furniture coming in this year?
Again, that was prioritized with the principals and John. It was moved into his budget because it needs to be a central expense now with transparency and ESSA reporting. It shouldn't be done by building anymore the way it was done in the past. So that was moved into his budget. So although it does look large, it is all the buildings now. And yes, there is furniture there that's 20 plus years old that's actually breaking, and they're repairing, and it's time to remove it and replace it. And as far as and a lot of that furniture also plays into our curriculum for special education and the new initiatives that the building principals are doing.
Okay, then one of the other lines that you have here is other, and it's over $5 million. And you have supplies, and in addition to the fact that we have supplies and equipment for buildings and grounds, technology, and BOCES, we also have this category of other that has supplies and equipment that is $1.15859 million.
That's supplies and equipment for all our school buildings.
Right, and 3.1 million of that is planned balance. So that takes that right down very quickly.
Well, planned balance says 2.1 million.
The equipment there covers all of the supplies in all of our buildings and all of the equipment. Just because this was something I learned when I became an administrator, so I don't know if every board member knows this. There's a dollar cutoff for when something is a supply and when something is equipment. Is it still $500, Steve, Teresa? Is it still $500 the cutoff?
Yeah.
So an item that one of the items costs less than $500 is called a supply. When an item costs more than $500, it's called equipment. It actually doesn't matter what the item is. For the most part, it's really just about how much it costs.
But you're spending $1.159 million on, and we don't even get a breakdown of what is equipment and what is supplies. So you don't even break that down. You're saying that $500 is the cutoff between a supply below and equipment above, but there's no differentiation on the line item.
So that's all the supplies and all the equipment for all of the buildings. That was what I was able to get you today. The request was made last night. I did my best to get you as much as I could today.
Mm-hmm. And that's so that's the best we can do is just.
Paul, I see you.
Okay, I think Angus has a very.
I don't know if you're done or not. I know Paul had his hand up.
Okay, let Paul speak. I'm listening.
Angus, just in terms of that 1.1589 or 1.16, let's call it. That's divided basically by 7, because there are 7 buildings. Not that it's equal, obviously, but that's for all seven buildings. If it was equal, that would be less than 200,000 per building, about 180,000 per building, 170,000 per building, whatever. And those supplies could be, I don't know, we're talking about toilet paper, or are we talking about actual paper and pencils, and is it cartridges for printers, and is it cartridges for whatever else is needed? So it's spread over. It's not like this number that's, this huge number that the district is having. It's really divided by seven schools.
Thank you, Paul.
At least I think so.
Yes, another way to look at that is if you look at it by student, it comes to $290 per student.
Is that also, well, I have a question, because what Paul's saying, 7 buildings, is administration and Hilbert included in that also?
Yes.
So it's really 8, well, I realize that's a much smaller facility, but Hilbert's included in it also.
But it also includes supplies for like athletics and things they have to buy for that, and uniforms, and all of that is included in that. So it's not just the running in the schools, it's other programs as well.
Right, okay.
As I just said, it comes out to $290 per student.
But doesn't the athletic department have their own budget?
That's in there.
Yes, but in the other, because I don't separate out their department, all of that is in other. So everyone, all the schools, the athletic department, everyone I didn't separate out, except for special ed, technology, buildings and grounds, and transportation. Everything is in other. So every single other department is in other.
Okay, Don has his hand up in case.
Okay, Paul, are you finished? Okay, Don?
For Lisa, the question I had when I was going through those items, number 6, professional development, $224,000. Could you tell me what that is for?
Which one is that? That's BOCES.
Professional development?
Teresa, I can't hear you. Are you? Okay.
No. Do you see the 224 he's talking about? It's under BOCES.
Professional development with BOCES, which is all of everything we do with BOCES. It's community schools that runs the Family Resource Center. It's all the actual PD we go to at BOCES. It's also all of the groups we belong to, this group of chairs, the ASIs, the principals, all of those groups, all of that goes through BOCES, and again, we get 48% back on that. It's also if we use any BOCES consultants who are often cheaper because we get the aid back.
And the textbooks for the $322,000,
that's actually state
year or what?
It's state money anyway. The $322,000 gets reimbursed by the state. So if we spend it, we get it reimbursed by the state.
Right.
When did the principals get together and make up their wish list to put into the budget? What was the time frame?
January, February.
So basically before the coronavirus really struck.
And during those conversations, they were also told that what they couldn't have. They came with what they wanted, and then they were told what they couldn't have, and then they were asked to prioritize. And that's how we get from proposal 1 to proposal 5, is that we look back and we say, okay, this was a wish list item, but it's not a number 1 or number 2 priority. So that's something we can put off till next year, or that's something we can look at differently. So that's part of what we use when we get from proposal 1 to proposal 5.
And proposal 1 was actually much larger before you get to see it, because it gets pared down before you see it.
Tom, I see it.
Well, the only problem there, Steve, is the fact that last year, okay, we had a 1% increase in the budget, and after the year was over, we had what, about $1 million left over? Okay, so remember that the Comptroller's Office in 2014 in their report, and again in 2019, said the same thing, that the district is overtaxing the community. Okay, every budget always has some fat in it. We all agree it's always good to have a little bit of cushion. Okay, however, this budget seems to not have only fat, it's a lot of pork. Okay, and it's really.
I think the Comptroller's Office would still be making that statement today.
We have to put in an increase when I think we could actually get through without an increase. Okay, and even have money left over next year.
Okay. All right, Tom, you had your hand up?
Yeah, Matt, I would like to call the question, please. I mean,
Okay.
we were here last night for 3 hours. We're reiterating, we're spinning our wheels. It's time for the vote. Thank you.
Okay. Is ready to vote?
But didn't we get new information today, Tom?
Or does anybody have anything that they need to add or any questions to inform themselves before we vote?
I'm looking at the line items now. Give me a minute. There was
Okay.
something I forgot.
First of all, in terms of Robert's rules, when someone says they're calling for question, you actually have to vote on the call for the question. Because let's say that there was one person who wanted to call for the question, but there were 6 of us who, wait a minute, we still got a lot more questions.
All right.
So they really have to, but Angus is looking at something, so let's give him some time. And we can all take
Right.
breaks.
And I, if things weren't such a mess around here because of,
Are you talking about your own house or are you talking?
yes,
Okay.
I would have my Robert's rules book.
No, but
Next
you do,
meeting,
but you do
it's-
call for question.
Everything is a mess.
No, because you could ask a discussion, let's say that, okay.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right.
Yeah, because Melissa was the first one to speak, so let's say
Yeah.
after she
No,
spoke.
you're right.
And then someone
You're
says, hey, let's call for question because well, that's it. No. Everybody wants to speak, so then we would have a
No,
vote.
you're right. You're right.
We would vote against calling for the question at that time. And then we could do it again later on, so whatever.
Okay, so,
So I looked. I'm good. We can.
okay, so,
We want to
Okay.
vote.
okay, we're gonna call the question. This is for the budget, 144 million. All those in favor signify by saying. Paul?
Wait, are we voting for calling for the question? We're not voting in favor of the budget yet. We're not.
Well, I think we actually are. I don't think anybody has anything left to add.
Well, I think we should still,
So I think we're ready to vote.
okay.
Is that appropriate? There,
Well-
somebody brought me my Robert's rules.
Well, is that your dog? Do you have your dog trained to do that? Is that
Cat.
cat, whatever dog?
All right. Let's vote. Budget of 144 million, resolution 1. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those against?
Nay.
Nay. Any abstentions? Yeas have it. Budget is approved. 2.02.
Wait.
Sorry?
Just a point of order.
Yes.
What is the percentage that we're,
It's the 1.25.
okay.
As per the, well, I mean, if you want, I mean, we
Yes,
can,
it's in the resolution.
I can read the resolution. Yeah, it's in the resolution. I recommend that the Board of Education adopt the school budget for the school year 2020,
I'm sorry.
2021 in the amount of $144,033,814, which includes a budget levy increase of 1.25% for a total new levy of $112,837,534.
Okay. I'm
Okay.
sorry. I missed that piece.
2.20, Proposition 2. This is the proposition we discussed last night, the use of $2.8 million of capital reserve fund monies to cover LED lighting installation, the fire alarm upgrade, and roof renovations and replacement at Suffern Middle School and Sloatsburg Elementary. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Was that Tommy?
Yes.
Second?
Second.
Dr. Nickbon? Any discussion? No discussion?
No, yes,
Yes?
yes.
Mr. Shapiro?
Yes, we said that we were are we still thinking about separating or?
No.
No, I think
No?
last night we landed on leaving it together.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay? Any other comments, questions, concerns?
I think it's a good idea to separate it, Paul.
yeah.
Okay, the consensus last night was not to separate. So this is the resolution that's up for vote.
Well, sometimes people
Was
change
there
their
really a
mind.
consensus last night?
Excuse me?
Was there really a consensus last night?
There certainly
Was there a
was.
I believe there was, Don.
But was there a vote?
There can't be a vote. There's a vote now.
Or is it still a possibility to separate it if that's what people want?
At this point in time, I don't think it's possible to separate a resolution into two resolutions when we're about to vote on it. Listen, you can vote. If it fails, then we can look to amend it somehow, but
We amended.
I don't know. Let's vote on it first and see where we get.
Is Mr. Shaw on the line?
No.
He would probably be able to answer that for you.
No, he's generally not at our meetings, except for executive.
But this is something that you could.
Does anybody have any concerns that they want to voice before we vote on this proposition?
I'd like to piece it out and have what definitely needs to get done and what can hold off until next year.
Okay, I understand. But like I said, we discussed this last night. This is what's up for vote right now. So are we prepared to vote?
We have a board member that just raised a question.
What's the question?
I guess it was my question. Are we going to separate them? And obviously the thought was not to separate them. I just have, okay, I answered my own question within my head. Sorry that you weren't privy to the conversation that I had going on, but
you're talking to yourself and answering yourself.
yes, I am.
Okay, that's not good.
Well, hey, when you've been, kind of holed up for eight weeks, you can imagine how my wife feels about it. My God.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. Proposition 2. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those against?
Nay.
Nay.
Any abstentions? Okay, the yeas have it. Resolution passes. We'll close this portion of the meeting. We will move to board member comments, and I do want to just make note that I believe that we have more. Well, I guess we'll get to this when we get to public participation again. So I think there are more things that need to get read. Board member comments.
Matt, how many people will be receiving ballots to vote in the school budget election? Do you know?
That's a good question. Approximately, Lee, 22,000, give or take?
I think it's about 20.
20,364.
What's that?
20,364, I believe was the last count I had.
To be exact.
Yeah, just draw out a number.
Rosalie?
So we'll see when the public votes on this, exactly how they feel.
Yes, we will.
Yep, we will. Okay, any other board member comments? Or were you finished, Don?
I'm finished.
Okay. Anybody else?
Well, I have comments. Again, there's no political gain. Using reserves, I was for a lower tax rate last year. I'm always for saving the taxpayer money. This year especially, we all agreed last year that our tax rate was going to be 1%. I think you guys were on board for a 2%, and then I was for a 0%. So we met in the middle at a 1%. And that's not what happened in our neighbors to the east. It was after the school district was taken over that things went south. So it wasn't that they used up their reserves before that happened. But you don't want to have reserves this high left over in the school district where you have taxpayers who are having a hard time. You know, this is taxpayer money that you're leaving in the school district bank accounts, and it causes political pork was a term that Cuomo used today, and it's used for union and political gain by people in the district, and that's what you want to avoid. I don't know what's going on here. I mean, some of the emails we got were from people who work in the district, and you really want to think about people who are paying taxes and are having a hard time. And I worry about those people who are on fixed incomes and people who lost their jobs. And I think you need to think about those people, and giving them a 1.25% increase when the equalization rate is going to change and our assessed values change. Your numbers were $90 increase for a 1.5% tax increase. So I can't wait to see what the actual numbers are, because at your 1.5% increase, it was a $90 increase, right, Steve? That's what you had on the papers. So you're telling me that it's going to be less than a $90 tax increase, right? According to your numbers, Steve, what's going to be our tax increase at 1.25? Steve? Can you not hear me?
It'll be approximately $60 as we talked about yesterday.
Oh, so it'll be $60. Okay. All right. So I can't wait.
The numbers, again, we used a tentative roll, which we had to use.
Okay.
This is
I can't wait to see.
of the meeting.
I'll leave it at that.
I'm sorry. What was that? I couldn't hear you.
Will you ask me or Steve?
Steve, I couldn't hear him.
I said it's your opinion as far as what's going to happen with equalization rates. Equalization rate 11 points.
This segment of the meeting is board member comments. This is not a discussion. We have had this discussion.
I'm making my comment, and I had a question. He's telling me that the rate he got is right. So I want to know what his number is, because I didn't see it yesterday. Please don't interrupt. You're telling me that you don't want me to interrupt you. You don't need to interrupt people. I mean, like, the way you operate these meetings is horrid. Please stop.
Okay. Melissa, please wrap up your comments so others can go.
I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yes, I have a comment. I'd just like to say that Ms. Campbell was reading emails that were received by the district clerk from people that are, many of whom are employees of the Suffern Central School District, and some of whom don't even live in the school district, so will not be paying the taxes that they're saying that we should be voting for. Just more to Melissa's point, I think that there's a lot of people out there that, feel as though that these taxes that we're going to be paying, they're going to have a difficult time. And I know that it's not an easy decision, and I respect everybody's opinion. But, there was a lot more contention tonight than I expected. I mean, we should have, in my opinion, a little bit more respect for each other in a public venue like this. There may not be as many people that would normally be on here, but there was not a lot of respect for the way that people were talking to each other. And it's sad because, there's a lot of, bad things going on in the world right now. And for us to be at each other's throats over money and deciding how we're going to slice up $144 million pie, it's like watching the Major League Baseball owners and the players fighting over only having an 82-game season this year. It's a little ridiculous. This is where we have to be sort of, respectful of each other. We can agree to disagree on things too, and we shouldn't be, yelling and screaming at each other because it's not doing anybody any good. Because at the end of the day, we all vote and it is what it is. So we vote the way that we feel. We put our opinions across and we move forward. And that's pretty much all I have. Thank you.
Anybody else like to say anything? Chris, Paul, Tom, anybody?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Paul?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Teresa. Thank you to my fellow board members. I respect all of your thoughts and all of your opinions, and it helps me dig deeper. And I guess that's a good thing. I wish we had the answers, for everyone, but obviously we don't. Larry, I thank you too. There was only an L there. There wasn't a picture of you, so I was trying to figure out what the L represented. Usually that's what my daughters give me, the sign, the L sign to me, which is a whole different area, but whatever. So, listen, these are tough times, and it's going to be tough next month. It's going to be tough probably throughout the summer. It's going to be tough in the fall. I was just listening to some of the so-called experts about the opening of K through 12 schools nationwide, as well as colleges and universities, and no one knows. Sorry. No one knows what the situation is. No one knows if kids are going to be going back to school, if colleges are only going to start in for maybe 8 or 9 weeks, and then when it comes time for Thanksgiving, all of the students are going to be home again, and then they'll reopen again sometime in mid-January or February 1st. There were so many questions. So, we're just going to keep on. We'll knock our heads and we'll agree and we'll disagree and we'll argue, or we'll have our conversations, but I respect everyone's opinion. I really do. And it's good that we don't all think the same, that we're not 7 robots all moving in the same direction, arms moving in the same direction, that we all come from a different angle. And I think it's very healthy, not only for this board, but for the school district. So thanks for all of your help, and I'm done.
All right, thank you. Tom, anything, or you good?
No, I'm good. I just want to thank everybody for their efforts, their time. It's a lot of work, and I appreciate what you've done. We got to keep this district. We got to keep this district where it is, top of the line. And again, I'm comfortable with my vote. I'm comfortable with my vote. So that's all I have to say.
All right. I just want to follow up on something that Paul said. It is good when you don't have 7 that thinks the same, that knows the same all the time. There needs to be debate, there needs to be discussion, and there's going to be points where opinions differ. And that's normal when you put 7 people together. 7 people with different backgrounds, from different walks of life, with different upbringings, and I mean that's going to happen. What is important, though, as a board of 7, is that when you have votes, or you have items that pass that are not unanimous, it's important for the board to function as one, regardless of whether what you felt was right got voted yes or got voted no. I think we've all been in situations where we've been on, we'll call it the losing side of a vote. And that's the way that it is sometimes. But what's important is for us to come together and at least support the district and support a budget that benefits our students and our programs and our teachers. So I would hope that for those who were not in favor of this budget, which you're entitled to, that you would still stand behind this district and
Absolutely.
and look to have this budget get passed and look to have this district maintain how great it is. The only other thing I wanted to add on a separate note is that there will be a strategic planning committee meeting this Friday, May 15th at 4 p.m. And I guess I haven't done a committee meeting yet via live stream, so I'm guessing it works the same way as this.
We don't actually live stream it. I think if anyone wants to attend it, they can contact the district clerk and we can give them the link to be in the meeting.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, then I guess for anybody out there watching or anybody who would have attended in public, they should email the district clerk and let them know they want to participate.
We should put that on the website, Matt. Can we put that on?
No, I know that, but I want to at least make sure that people know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Heather, can you update board docs, and I'll have Jenny update it on social media, please.
Yes.
And we should email Mrs. Veltini because she's always there.
Yep. Well, she's probably watching right now, so she's probably heard. It's probably already. It's already on her calendar. All right. That's all I had. So we're going to close this portion of the meeting. We're going to go to participation. This is for any district-related matters. And Heather, I think you have one more that you got.
I have two more emails that so I was, it had to do with the action items, but they were a little behind. So
okay.
Can I go ahead and read them? Okay. To the Board of Education. You guys okay with that? It's on the action items, these particular.
I mean, that's still district related, still district matter.
I was asked to read them.
Okay.
To the Board of Education. Last night I was sitting home listening to the budget workshop and
sorry. Who's this from?
Sorry, Judy Bruno. People were speaking over each other, not listening to each other. And when someone did stop for a breath, then you would just speak louder to try and make your point. What I witnessed were people behaving more like children in our schools. It is time for all to grow up and behave like adults. It amazes me how little some of you know about the people who live in this district. Do you realize that the average median income in Montebello is $157,798? The average median property value is $624,000. The average median income in Suffern is $87,554. The average median property value is $311,000. The average median income in Airmont is $94,606. The average median property value is $470,600. The people that live and work in these villages can certainly afford a $90 tax increase. This is a fairly wealthy district as a whole. Last year, you only wanted a 0% tax increase. Why? Now you are asking for the same thing under the guise of the pandemic. You spoke about a 0% increase. You say we can use the reserves, that they are there for a rainy day. It is a pandemic. Now is the time to use the reserves. Well, in this budget proposal, you are talking about using $3 to $4 million in reserves. If you raise taxes between 1% and 2%, but if you use the reserves and don't raise the taxes, how are you refilling the reserves? Wake up, look to the east. Please, it is really enough with the solar talk. It has been said many different times that our buildings are not suited for solar. We do, however, need to fix 2 roofs now, not in a year when the potential of the roof leaking is worse. The money is already there to fix the roofs. Do what needs to be done to the fire alarms, and the LEDs will save money. Why is this so hard to figure out? Seems like common sense. The food collection done by the Suffern Hook and Ladder was mentioned several times. Look, there are always people in need, always people who can't make ends meet. But in this community, that is not the majority, it is the minority. Why do you think 2 trailers were needed? The outpouring of the people who can help was huge. Why don't you sit back and let that sink in? I think some of you need to look at the school district you represent. Yes, this is a terrible pandemic. Yes, people have lost lives, lost jobs, but the loss of a job is a temporary situation. You cannot have a less than 0% or 1% tax increase for a temporary situation. The school district is the best in the country for a reason. Stop trying to pull it down. So that was from Judy Bruno.
Okay, thank you.
And then I have one more. I was asking. Okay, first off, no one wants a tax. This is Rebecca Cowerman from Suffern. First off, no one wants a tax increase. What we can live with is a reasonable tax increase. Under 2% is a reasonable tax increase. My village taxes have gone up close to 50% in the last 5 years, while my school tax has increased less than 10%. Maybe Mr. McKenzie, Ms. Reamer, and Mr. Karen should run for my village board. Second, my understanding is that the 3 board members suggesting the budget that seems unsustainable made a pretty decent living off the taxpayers and still are. I don't begrudge you for that, but I find it ironic that you are now the champions of the taxpayer. We would probably sing a different tune when collecting those pension salaries and settlements. Third, last night's meeting was an abomination. It's fine to argue in public about the budget, but then you must come to a consensus and get behind the budget so the community can do the same. If this budget goes down, it will irreparably harm our entire community, and its defeat will be squarely on the shoulders of board members McKenzie, Reamer, and Cairns for putting politics ahead of well-being of our schools. Lastly, I'm not on Facebook, but I do stalk my daughter's account. Do us a favor and stay off social media. Try to be professional. If you want to be a social media politician, maybe go into state or national politics where that garbage belongs, but keep it away from our schools. And that is all I have.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you to those that submitted and had their statements read, and Heather, thank you for taking the time to read them. I hope you have a bottle of water with you. Okay. So we will close this portion of the meeting and move to acting superintendent's closing comments.
First, I just want to thank the board for their, thoughtful consideration of the budget and the proposition. I appreciate the position you were in and the decisions you made. I also want to mention to our graduating seniors and their parents, we heard you loud and clear last week. You all received an email today with a survey in it with a few graduation options and an opportunity to just let us know anything else you wanted us to know. I did receive, a large number of emails from parents and students both ways in favor of additional options, and some who thought that the option we shared last week was just fine. So they kind of ran the gamut. I think the thing I was proudest of is the students who wrote really well-written letters. So that was really enjoyable to read the students' well-written letters and emails. Seniors and senior parents, please fill out the survey. We'll see. We're still waiting on guidance from the state in terms of what our options are, but at least now we'll have a feel for what the students and their parents, what their priorities are. I also want to just give a shout out to 4 of our teachers, George Mugno from the high school, Tom DeFabio from the middle school, Nicole McKenzie from Cherry Lane, and Eleanor Cerny from Montebello, who have 3D printing their ear savers for the county. We have literally dropped off hundreds of them, and they keep asking for more. So that's been a really successful little side project, and I really appreciate those teachers taking the time and effort to make that happen. That's it.
All right, great, thank you. Okay, You know, I was going to say something, Lee, about your comments, and it just disappeared. All right, that's really going to do it. Before we adjourn, again, I'm just going to remind everybody that's watching and listening that there will be a strategic planning meeting on Friday at 4, and then we have another regular board meeting a week from tonight, which is the regularly scheduled meeting on May 19th. That being said, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Moved.
Was that Mr. Cairns? Oh, that was Angus. Okay.
Second.
Mr. McKenzie, second. Mr. Cairns. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody against? Anybody want to stay? Okay. Motion passes. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Heather, thank you very much.